Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Z Invest. In this video, I'm going to show you how to analyze annual reports fast and efficiently. Now, I've been doing this for my day job for about 2 years right now. So trust me, because I've been looking for more shortcuts than you can ever imagine. Annual reports are arguably the most trusted information when it comes to a company's business information. So always refer back to the annual report if there's any conflicting information that you find on the other web sources. Now, before I jump into today's content, there are actually a lot of ways where you can get hold of a company's annual report. First of all, you can either look at the Bursa Malaysia, just look up for the stock's name and you will be able to find the annual report there. Secondly, you can also look up at their respective websites and just look for investor relations, and that is where you can download their latest annual report. Okay, with all of that out of the way, let's jump right into today's content. So first and foremost, I will always look at the chairman or the CEO's statement right from the get-go. This is the qualitative segment of the annual report, and this is usually where the company's top management addresses what are the good jobs or the bad jobs that they have done for the past financial year. This is also a great place for you to know where there are any upcoming projects or any future catalysts for the company's growth. Now, do take note that these are all marketing talks, but it does give you a flavor of what you can actually take note for the company's future growths. Now, Warren Buffett, one of the world's renowned investors, said that this is one of the most valuable portion of the annual report, because this is where the company tells you what are the problems and how they solve the problems, and it just shows you how straightforward are the company's top management is with the shareholders. Next up, I will jump straight into the key financial summary, which usually comes in 5 years. This is essentially the quantitative part of a fundamental analysis. So if you want to learn more about fundamental analysis, I will link it up to my previous videos in the top corner. Okay, back to the point. This is actually one of the most important sections out of the entire annual report. You can get away with just looking at this particular section because it packs so much into a few pages. You can get information on items like revenue, their growth trends, their EPS growth, their EBITDA, as well as many more financial metrics, which just shows you the company's business performance for the past financial years. Seriously, you can even just flip into this section and just create a Excel spreadsheet and just copy down all the metrics down and just do that against the competitors in the same industry, and voila, you can have all the financial metrics ready for you to compare against these companies' competitors. And next up, the key section to the entire annual report, which is the financial statements. This is usually at the middle portion of the annual report and usually just stretches its notes up to the end of the report. This is almost similar to the 5 years financial summary, but with more details in the notes. The notes are what makes the annual report stands out because it explains every single line in the financial statements, and if there are any big discrepancies or any big jump or decrease in the numbers, the company will usually put down a explanation note. So this is a very helpful tips as well. So know that the financial statements come in 3 components, which are the profit and loss statement, or we call it the P&L, the balance sheet, as well as the cash flow statement. Firstly, the revenue. This is just a rough indicator of the turnover volume, so a uptrend or a downtrend doesn't really tells you much. This is because a company's profit is directly affected by its cost of goods sold, which links us to the second point. The cost of goods sold tells us the direct costs that are linked to the production of the revenue. For example, labor costs and also material costs. So usually when you subtract the cost of goods sold from the revenue, you will end up with the gross profit. Next, I look at the operating expenses, where you have all the expenses such as general and admin, your R&D expenses, your marketing expenses, your rental expenses, and many more. Note that in this section, some of the financial statements will usually lump the depreciation and amortization expense, which is very normal inside a profit and loss statement. But for the purpose of evaluating a company's operational efficiency, I usually look at EBITDA, which consists of cash items, so I do not look at the depreciation and amortization expense. This leads us to the fourth point, which is the EBITDA. So essentially, EBITDA is the line where you have revenue minus off your cost of goods sold and minus off your operating expenses without the depreciation and amortization expense. The EBITDA metric just tells you how efficiently a company is running its business and how efficient the company is. Lastly, we have the net income, or we call it the earnings. And this just tells you how profitable a company's business is. But be careful, if you are a dividend investor, you want to look at cash items. So just watch out for all the non-cash items in the net profit. Next up, we look at the balance sheet. And this financial statement gives you a picture of the company's assets, liabilities, and also shareholders' equity, which is key in telling you how much a company is worth. From the assets, it tells you how much money a company has. From the liabilities, it tells you how much the company owes to run or to own its assets. And the remainder, which is the shareholders' equity, just tells you the net equity or the book value of the company's worth. So by analyzing the balance sheet, it tells you a few key information, such as whether a company has enough cash to meet its short-term obligations or borrowings, whether the company is reinvesting into the company to expand its business, whether a company is managing their receivables and payables, which ultimately decides their working capital required to run the business. So those are generally the few information that you can get hold with by just looking at the balance sheet. And lastly, we look at the cash flow statements, which are made up of three components: cash flow from operating activities, investing, and also financing activities. Firstly, I look at the cash flow from operating activities. This is generally the amount of cash generated from the company's business and also operation. You can use this to calculate the operating cash flow divided by its net revenue ratio, which is a great indicator of a company's business performance. Next up is the cash flow from the financing activities. This line gives you a picture of the debt and also equity transactions, such as dividend payments, sale or buybacks of shares or also bonds, and etc. So pro tip right here, if you are a dividend investor, remember to look up for this section, because this is where you can get information for the amount of dividend paid, and it's important for you to calculate your dividend yield as well as your dividend payout ratio. For a dividend investor, this is more important than the P&L because the net income generally does not reflect the real cash items. And thirdly, we have the cash flow from investing activities, and this tells you the cash transaction from the acquisition or divestment of any assets, plants, and also equipments. In short, it just tells you whether a company is investing or divesting its business. Alright, so I've come to the end of this episode. Allow me to summarize how to analyze annual reports in three key points. Firstly is the chairman's or the CEO statement, which is essentially the qualitative portion of any analysis. Second, we look at the key financial summaries for the past 5 years. This is where you get hold of a ton of information and is usually the best shortcut you can ever get in an annual report. Thirdly, look up the 3 financial statements and just read the notes. It will give you a better understanding of every item inside the financial statements. And that's all for now. I hope you have gained some value from this video, and if you do consider help me clicking the like button as well as the subscribe button down below. It really helps me in growing this channel. Once again, thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.